Hello everyone, and welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian, and I'm broadcasting to you from beautiful Budapest, capital city of Hungary in Central Europe. Hi, Lucky Vitek. Hi, Dewin. Good morning to you, Lucky. Good afternoon to you, Dewey. All right, so today we are continuing with our online course sessions. We are on session number 5. If you missed any of the previous sessions, don't worry about it. They are up on the channel, so you can check them out after this stream, perhaps. Just look at our video list, and you will see sessions 1 through 4 available there as recorded live classes from the last week. All right, as usual, our materials do come from our websites for academic IELTS. Please visit us at aehelp.com. That's academicenglishhelp.com. And if you're studying for general IELTS, please visit us at gieltshelp.com. That's generalieltshelp.com, where we have lots of materials for you, including over 100 hours of video lessons. Many of them are pre-recorded high-definition lessons. We have 6 original practice exams. We have audio for listening, reading, speaking, practicing the British accent. You can use our websites on your phone or on your tablet. They're responsive. Lots of good materials there for you. We'll use some of them a little bit later on today. Hi, Mohammed. Good to see a member in the early class as well. Thank you for that. Good morning. Hi, Arcana. I hope you're doing well. If you have an Android phone or tablet, you can also download our app. It's called Academic IELTS Help. You'll see this logo here. All right. So just a little bit more. If you're looking for Skype mock practice interviews for the IELTS, we can set that up for you. Just send me an email to adrian@aehelp.com. And if you're looking for help with your Task 1, Task 2 writing, that's also available on the website. Those two are paid services. Just a quick peek at our schedule. Please keep this in mind. Today we have an unusually early class, my time. Again, looking at the 5th part of our online course. And then for the next 3 days, there are no classes, okay? So tomorrow and then the 2 days after, Sunday, Monday, no classes, and then back to the regular kind of schedule on Tuesday, putting in an extra class on Tuesday, and then back to that regular time. VJ, today's class is early because I have a trip planned. I have to go away for the next few days. That's why we don't have class for those 3 days as well. So I'm leaving soon after this class on a little bit of an adventure. And then I'll be back, and then we'll have 5 days of classes going from the 14th all the way to the 18th. All right. So if you have our courses, do open up your exam book number 1. We'll be using that today. And we are continuing with the listening section. Today's class will cover 2 important points for the listening section of IELTS. First, we'll talk about the correct use of timing. So how do you use the timing of the listening section? That's a very important skill to know and to practice at home before you sit the IELTS exam. Of course, ideally, you're studying well before the IELTS exam so you can really master this. I'm just going to go to the lakeside, Shabazz, and relax with the family for a couple days. I'll be doing some work. We are uploading some new mock IELTS speaking interviews with Vietnamese candidates. So make sure to check those out. There will be some exciting new materials being uploaded to YouTube and our websites even during these days where we don't have the live streaming. So today, again, 2 things that we're looking at. One is correct use of timing, and then the second one is what I mentioned in the previous classes. We are looking at specific strategies for the 9 different kinds of questions in the listening section. If you use your timing well in the IELTS, you'll definitely increase your scores, and that goes for even high-level English speakers who would otherwise do well in the IELTS also. There's an expression in English, timing is everything. This is true in a lot of parts of life. It's definitely valid for the IELTS exam. The IELTS exam is a timed test. So again, that shows you that IELTS is not just testing your English, but it's also testing your intelligence, your ability to think critically, to communicate well and quickly. Okay? If IELTS were just a test of English, you could take all the time in the world, but that's not the case. There's a very set kind of timing, okay? So you need to know what to do when you're preparing, when you're looking at the answer sheet. You need to know what you're doing when you're answering the questions. You need to know what to do in the review time, and then you should also know what you're doing in the transferring answer time. So the preparation time, you have about 20-30 seconds before each listening section. Then, of course, you answer as you listen. By the way, that's different from TOEFL. In TOEFL, you often answer after you listen. And then you have about 20 to 30 seconds to review your answers after each section or part of the section. And then you have 10 minutes at the very end of the listening in IELTS. After you've finished listening to all 4 sections, you have 10 minutes to transfer your answer sheet. And that's a very important 10 minutes that you need to take full advantage of, okay? All right. So, in the beginning of the listening section, there's about a 1-minute, 30-second introduction time, all right, where it explains to you about the IELTS listening, copyright laws, and so on. That's quite a bit of time, 90 seconds, and as you may or may not know, the way that we count seconds in English, or one of the ways, is we count it as 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. So basically saying the number in 1,000, and that roughly is 1 second of time. Now, a lot of students think that 90 seconds is not a lot of time, or they think 20 minutes in the reading section is not a lot of time, but it's actually quite a bit of time if you really start counting seconds, okay? So you can do a lot of thinking in 90 seconds, believe me, all right? So make sure that you use that introduction time to look at questions. Know the instructions, of course, before you go to the exam, so you don't have to really pay attention to this. And then here's a really neat trick that you can use in your IELTS. When you're listening to that 90-second time, look at sections 3 and 4, all right? There's no rule, there's no clear rule in IELTS that you're not allowed to look at the other sections of the listening when that instruction time is going on. Now, I've talked to many students, and some students said that, well, when I was doing my exam and I tried to look at section 3 and 4 in the introduction time, the examiner said, hey, please don't do that, please just look at section 1. So in that case, just say, sorry, and then go back to section 1. But for most students, this is not the case. They don't actually say you can't look at section 3 and 4. It just says turn your book to section 1. So if you have the chance, it's definitely worth a try. It's not likely that you're going to get kicked out of IELTS for trying to look at the questions, the topic controlling ideas of section 3 and 4. Remember, section 1 and 2 are much easier, so the review time is absolutely enough there. It's section 3 and 4 where you want to get a little bit of a more detailed idea, okay? And then what you're doing is you're trying to visualize the situation, you're paying attention to the key words, and you're trying to predict what that section will be about, okay? I'll show you an example of this really quickly of what you should expect. So here, let's just go to our websites. This is our general website, General IELTS with the green background, and then this is our academic one here with the blue background. So if you have our full course, when you log in, lots and lots of materials there for you. Of course, including tons of audio for all these listening sections. So I'm going to play CD1 track 1, which is basically listening section 1 with the instructions. Jeffrey, good to see you in this early class. I just caught it out of my left corner of my eye that you're in here. All right, so let's go to the exam book here real quick. And we'll jump to the review test for this one. So it looks exactly like the IELTS test. All right, so basically what you want to do is just skip through section 1 and 2, and when you hear this instruction time, so I'm going to play this, and you can look at your watch or your phone to see how long these instructions actually are. And these instructions are very, very similar to the IELTS. These are our instructions in our copyright, but it's very, very similar. It's paraphrased with the IELTS, okay? So have a listen. And during this time, you want to review section 3.4, pay attention to controlling ideas, and visualize.
This recording is copyrighted by 2 Think One Solutions Inc. and World ESL Tutors. You will hear several different recordings and you will answer questions on what you hear. There will be time given to read the instructions and questions, and you will be given a chance to check your work. The recordings will be played only once. The test is made up of 4 sections. At the end of the test, you will have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. Now turn to section 1. Listening section 1. You will hear a conversation between 2 men as one of the men registers for a football league. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. You will see that there is an example. This time only, the conversation relating to this question will be played.
Hello there. I'd like to register for the Autumn Men's Football League.
All right. In what town will you be playing?
I'd like to play in Chester, but I'd be willing to travel to Liverpool if I had to.
The man says he wants to play in Chester, so B has been indicated for you. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hello there. I'd like to register for the Autumn Men's...
All right, so we're not answering the questions right now. The goal with what I just did, where you saw me kind of jumping around in the questions there, is to show you roughly what you need to do in the listening section to maximize your prediction, your insight into what you're going to be listening to, so that you can really maximize your scores when you get to those more difficult section 3 and section 4 questions. Is that clear for everybody what I just did there? So did that make sense to the viewers who are watching right now, why I did that, what I was trying to show you there? I just want to be reassured that you understood why I did that. Okay, Mohammed says he's pretty clear on that. All right, so here's another question then. So practicing this timing, and you should do this at home. So after you do this, after you listen to the instructions, so you start paying attention to those parts, then you should afterwards ask yourself some good questions. And when you're practicing this strategy at home, you should do something like this, where you take your paper and your pencil and you go, okay, so during the instruction time, and then ask yourself a question. What is part 3 about? So I hope that some of you are reading what I was showing you there. In this case, did anybody catch what part 3 is about? I'll put up the other questions here. And what did I see? Okay, so these are the 2 big questions you want to ask yourself once you've had a look at that section 3, section 4. So when I showed you section 3, section 4 during this review time, this 1 minute, 30-second review time, were you able to figure out what section 3 is likely going to be? So what's going on there? And were you able to figure out what section 4 is likely going to be? Ideally, the point that you want to get to is where you can figure out that section 3 is about some kind of group project in maybe French class. I remember I saw those names like Napoleon and Robespierre, okay? Mohammed says section 4 was about climate change, and Arcana says, yeah, it's probably a monologue. So you're kind of jumping ahead. Think about section 3 as well. So yeah, it's a monologue. It's a lecture. It's very good to look at the questions and try to figure out, am I going to be listening to a dialogue? Should I prepare myself to listen to multiple speakers? Or should I be preparing myself to listen to a professor speaking a little bit more quickly? Part 3 was, this is a group project in French or history class, something like that, right? We saw those names. We saw the word poster board. It's a school project. Good, Jeffrey. Okay. And definitely a dialogue. Okay, so here you have to prepare for multiple speakers. Number 4 was about climate change monologue. It's a lecture. And then obviously you need to visualize. So just what I was explaining with these big key strategies, you're applying these throughout the test. So what did you actually see? And then students sitting at a desk talking about Napoleon. Okay, so write as much as possible, but that's the idea. Now with climate change, maybe you saw water levels rising and spilling, and oceans spilling onto streets, icebergs melting and falling into the ocean. Okay, so just a couple of quick ideas there, but this is what you want to do. So again, just a quick recap, all right? So the IELTS listening always starts with about a 90-second instruction period. In most cases, you're able to take a quick peek at section 3 and section 4 during this time. That's where most students lose their marks, especially students going for those high scores like 6.5, band 7, 7.5. So section 1 is generally fairly easy. You don't need too much review to be able to get a good score there. So you want to increase your scores for section 3 and 4. You look at them, you look at the questions, you try to figure out what's going on here, who's talking, how many people are talking, and what can I see about this information, okay? That's going to be very, very useful for you, that strategy. As long as you practice it 4 or 5 times at home, you will most likely catch at least 2, 3 extra points in the more difficult sections. Now, remember, girls and guys, the raw scores in the listening is out of 40. So each section has 10 possible points. And often the difference between a 6.5 and a 7 or a 7.5 and an 8 is just a couple of points. It's just 3, 4 points maximum. Especially when you get in the higher bands, okay? So those are some really important points. So you want to catch those, all right? So here's the example of the instructions that we just listened to. You can listen to that in your course, okay? Now, as you heard in the instructions, you have about 20 seconds before each section to review the information, okay? So in this time, you want to focus on the main headings of the questions, the question instructions. Absolutely pay attention to those. If it says 1 word, then definitely don't write 2 words. If it says 2 or 3 words, then you need to keep in mind that most likely 1 or 2 answers will be those 2 or 3 words and or a number. All right, so don't skip through the instructions. It's very, very important. All right. So in that 20 seconds, similarly to the instruction time, So here, sorry, we're getting into the review time. So once you've answered the question, so you're listening to the audio and you answer the questions, then you have 20 seconds to review your questions. We're going to, of course, practice all of what I'm showing you here. In that time to review your questions, it's really important that you review your questions and not look at the next section, okay? Hugh, it's a very good question. So Hugh is saying, how can I review all the questions? I usually need more than that. I need about a minute. That's a great question, Hugh. You don't have to look at all of the information. For example, when you're looking at multiple choice, the question is very important. You don't really need to read the answers, all right? As long as you're picking out the key words like the subject and the verb of the sentence, you're doing a good job. You don't need to read the little details of everything, okay? Now, going back here in this review time, so when they say, now you have some time to check your answers, and we'll hear that in a second, make sure you're checking your answers. Make sure that the grammar is correct. Make sure that the word form is good. Make sure that your spelling is good. Make sure that you didn't mess up on the instructions and write 2 words when it's 1 word only. All right? Now, why do you want to do that in the 20 seconds? Because the information is still fresh. Okay? So I'm going to write up a really important tip here. Okay? And it's kind of a warning as well. In the review time, so in that 20 seconds to review your answers, you must review them. Okay? Too many students, so when I'm teaching students and we're doing practice listening sections, so many times what I see is that students use the review time to start looking at the next section to see what that one's about. That's a really bad idea, okay? When I see students do that, they usually score lower than when they actually use their review time, because in many cases, students will catch 1 or 2 simple mistakes and pick up some extra points. So do not look at the next section in this time. Okay, very important. I see too many students not using that review time for review, but they're looking at the other questions. So make sure you do that, okay? Make sure you look for those points. All right, so here we go. Now we're going to start talking about the specific questions. There's 9 types of questions in the listening section. We'll look at some examples for each one, and we'll look at some strategies for each one, okay? Again, it's really important that you practice all of these different strategies at home. The curriculum test in our course includes all of the different question types in the listening section, okay? So, let's look at these 9 types of questions. So what are they, right? That's a good question here. What are these 9 kinds of questions? There's multiple choice. There's form or note completion. There's matching type questions. There's sentence completion. There's flowchart completion. There's table completion. Then you have short answers. You have diagram labeling. And you have summary completion. So this is how the question types are separated in the listening. Here, some of you might be wondering, holy smokes, am I going to see all of these different kinds of questions in my listening exam? No, absolutely not. Usually one IELTS exam will have about 5 or 6 of these different 9. You will not see all 9 different kinds, most likely. Okay, I've never really seen all 9 types within one exam. Usually when I'm looking at IELTS past papers, you can identify about 5 or 6 of these within a different exam. Now, do you know what they will be? No, you have no idea. So it could be any 5 or 6 of these 9. So you have to be familiar with all of them, okay? Arcana, yeah, multiple choice can be the most difficult, and the reason why is because students think that they can just choose the answer, but that's not the way to approach the multiple choice. So you'll see here in a moment, it's the first one that we're looking at, okay? And of course, IELTS does develop their exams, and throughout the years, they have made changes. So that's why we have this friend here showing us this important sign that always pay attention to the instructions. So don't assume that you know all of the instructions, even if you've done a lot of practice tests. IELTS does occasionally make changes to the way that they show the instructions or the instructions themselves. So do make sure you pay attention to those, okay? Always look at those question instructions. All right, so let's look at this first type, multiple choice. Okay. When you're looking at multiple choice questions, try to paraphrase the key words in your head during the exam, especially adjectives and verb phrases. Okay. So we'll practice that in a second, but you're trying to paraphrase that as quickly as possible during your review time or while you're listening. All right. Now, the second strategy here is very important. What you need to do to get multiple choice questions correct is you have to answer from listening. Don't expect that you can miss the information or the question in the listening and then somehow figure out what the answer is. It doesn't work that way. You basically have to understand the question, hear the answer, and then choose the correct answer. Don't look at the answers and think that the answer will pop out at you from the choices. It doesn't work that way, all right? Especially in the listening. Now, the third point is very important also, of course. When you hear the answer for multiple choice, mark it. So choose the one, A, B, C, or D, and then forget about it. Don't change multiple choice answers, all right? It's a very, very bad idea. Large-scale studies and research shows that people usually have the correct answer on their first choice, and if they change it, in many cases, they're actually making the wrong choice. So a very good rule of thumb, just a general rule, is when you're doing multiple choice exams, stick with your first answer, and then do not change it, okay? Strategy 4 is think logically. Okay, in multiple choice, often if you use good logic, good critical thinking, you realize that 2 or even 3 of the choices don't make sense and are not possible. So figure it out that way. But again, don't depend on the answers. Okay, just a second here. I'll get the screen back for you. So we'll look at an example of this here in just a moment. All right. So stick with your answer. That's right, Manisha. That's a good way to say it. Good to see you in class as well. All right, so here's a couple of multiple choice questions taken out of an exam. We'll listen to the audio here and we'll go through this. So again, strategy number 1, so when you're reading this in your review time, okay, so you have 20 seconds to review the questions, so you quickly read this. Football matches played, okay? So the key words that you're looking at here and you're training your eyes for are these words here. Football matches played, okay? So here's the verb, okay? The subject here is the man. You might want to catch that. But the controlling idea here is the football matches. So when I'm reviewing this multiple choice question in my listening booklet, I'm training my eyes to catch especially this and this. So focus on football matches played, okay? I don't need to worry about the answers because those can confuse me. There's 2 wrong answers there, all right? Again, in number 2, what do you think are the key words? So for number 2, what do you think are the key words that your eyes should catch, focus, and try to paraphrase? Okay, so what should be, when you're looking at this one here, what do you think? Yeah, absolutely. Kaufuktin. Position is the controlling idea, and then play is the verb. The man is okay, but most importantly, it's these two words that you want to catch. Notice that in the English language, it's usually subject, verb, object. So that gives you the idea that the words are generally located in these sections, okay? Now it's a question, so here the verb is coming at the end, but that's what you're focusing on. Okay, so you've caught these words. Now, what do you do with them? You try to paraphrase them, right? So Jeffrey says, maybe think about the word spot. Okay. Football match, might want to think of games. All right? Or tournaments. So here now you're paraphrasing these. Soccer game. Mohammed, that's a good point. IELTS is British, so they will use the British English. In British English, they don't say soccer. That's more US, Canada. So you probably won't hear soccer. You only hear football. But it's good thinking about that as well, right? So you're thinking about these synonyms. Position, where, right? So even a question, where does the man play? Okay, so you're thinking of different ways that you could hear these key words, all right? And then you listen and you pick your answer, okay? Now, of course, in the official IELTS, you're not writing these and you're not circling. Here's a really good point as well. A lot of students ask me when I'm doing the IELTS, is it a good idea to circle and underline and keywords and phrases in the listening and in the reading? What do you think my answer is for that? So a lot of students ask me, should I circle keywords when I'm actually sitting the official IELTS? So should I circle them or should I underline them like this? So should you be underlining words and circling words during your real exam in IELTS? What do you think my opinion is on that? Let's see if some of you are getting familiar with my thinking. So Hugh Tran Ewan says, no, don't do that. Manisha says, I think it's distracting. Hugh Tran Ewan says, yeah, just do it in your mind. Focus on your third eye, says Jeffrey. You can, Mohammed, absolutely. You can write on your booklet. In fact, in the listening section, remember, you're writing your answers in the booklet, and then you're transferring them to the answer sheet at the end, right, Mohammed? So you're writing in your booklet. So Lytton, Arcana, Gary, Kaja, no, it's not a good idea. Okay, it's not a good idea to underline and circle keywords during the real IELTS. When you're practicing at home, yes, do it. So you're training your eyes and you can do good review. So at home, yes, but not in the official test. And it's the exact reason that Manisha mentioned. Two things, it's distracting, and number two, it's time-taking, and it's unnecessary, okay? If you've practiced it at home and you've trained your eye to do it, your mind's eye, as Jeffrey said, your third eye can basically hold that information, okay? So I'll make a note of that as well, okay? So when practicing at home, it is good to circle or underline keywords in listening and reading. Questions. But this is a bad idea during the real exam. It is distracting and time-taking. Okay? So just in your head. All right, that's my advice. I've tested this with lots and lots of students, and surely it does show that students who circle and underline during the official test tend to do more poorly than when they don't, okay? So don't distract yourself and don't waste the time on that, all right? Okay, so let's listen to this now. Pay attention to the paraphrasing, and again, don't think about the questions, think about what you hear and then choose, okay? So listen to the audio for these multiple choice questions and apply those last couple strategies of focusing on what they're saying and choosing the answer, sticking with it, and then leaving it. Here we go.
There's a very good chance you would have to try out for the team in Chester. Are you a good player?
I consider myself a good player, yes. I have been to a number of the autumn men's league games in the past, just as a spectator, and I'm sure I would have no trouble fitting in.
Okay, good. So we will register you for Chester then. I just need to get some information from you, starting with your position. Where on the field do you prefer to play?
I'm a midfielder, although really I can play anywhere aside from goalkeeper.
Oh, I forgot to ask your name.
Right, I guess that's it.
I think that might have been a little bit quiet, which is no problem because I can play the audio for you out of the website as well. So here we go.
Where on the field do you prefer to play?
I'm a midfielder, although really I can play
Waited for you. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hello there. I'd like to register for the Autumn Men's Football League.
All right. In what town will you be playing?
I'd like to play in Chester, though I'd be willing to travel to Liverpool if I had to.
Well, we have 2 spots left open on the team in Chester and 5 spots open on the team in Liverpool. There's a very good chance you would have to try out for the team in Chester. Are you a good player?
I consider myself a good player, yes. I have been to a number of the Autumn Men's League games in the past, just as a spectator, and I'm sure I would have no trouble fitting in.
Okay, good. So we will register you for Chester then. I just need to get some information from you, starting with your position. Where on the field do you prefer to play?
I'm a midfielder, although really I can play anywhere aside from goalkeeper.
Oh, I forgot to ask your name.
All right, so what's the correct answer for number 1? Anybody? Let's start with number 1. Let's go in the correct order here. I see that some of you are saying, I know what it is for. Okay, so yeah, good. So Mohammed says that for number 1, it's B. That's correct. Okay, do we hear the word football? No, we don't hear that. Do we hear the word matches? No, we don't hear that. Okay, what do we hear? So for this first one, what do we hear instead of the word football or instead of the word matches? We hear the word game. Okay, so the man says, I have been to a number of the games in the past, but just as a spectator. Okay, so that means that he has not played any games. He says just as a spectator. Okay? So this word lets you know that he's not played any games. And this word here, game, if you were able to think about that instead of the word matches, then you were able to focus in on this piece of information and get this. This one was a little bit easier because those key words were mentioned. So position was mentioned and play was mentioned. And the man clearly said midfielder. Now, notice something interesting. So this one's tricky because of the paraphrasing in the question. So matches to game. This one's a little bit tricky because the speaker mentions both midfielder and goalkeeper. So he says, I can play anywhere from the field aside from goalkeeper. Now that means that striker might be an answer as well, but the man clearly says, I'm a midfielder. Okay? And the question is, what position does the man play? And the man says, I'm a midfielder. So clearly that's the position that he plays. So they don't mention this one. It would be counterintuitive to choose this over this. This is a better answer. and he clearly says aside from goalkeeper, so he doesn't play goalkeeper. Now, it makes logical sense as well. If you know the game of football, you know that a lot of players can play different positions on the field, but being a goalkeeper is a very different position, right? So again, applying those strategies of logic and of paying attention to these words and paraphrasing in your mind is very effective. It does take time, but you can do it quickly if you practice at home, okay? So that's what you need to do for multiple choice questions. Now, these ones are coming from section 1, so they're a little bit more simple. The sentences are shorter, the answers are easier. That's why I use this for an example. Multiple choice in section 3 and 4 are more difficult, so you need to practice them, okay? Now, in the online course, you have a quiz here. All right, and then here you have an explanation of the answers. So the person says, I consider myself a good player. Yes, I have been to a number of the men's league games in the past, just as a spectator. Okay, so this is where the answer that he hasn't played any games is coming from. All right, so the answer is B there. And then here it is for the second one. He says, I'm a midfielder. This is the question that you're paying attention to. And then that's where the answer is coming from. So the answer is A. Okay, so let's look at the next type of question. This is the form or note completion. And these are very common for section 1. Form or note completion is where somebody is maybe registering, like for a football league, and then you have to fill out the form. So you have to fill out their name, where they live. So a couple of strategies that are very, very useful, okay? And again, these contain demographic information, so you have to really practice listening to spelling and names, okay, as I showed in the previous classes, okay? Hugh Tran Quinn, yes, when you say aside, it means accept. Yeah. It means accept. So that's good. Yeah. All right, so strategy 1 for this, when you're looking at these form or notes, you should visualize the categories. So you should try to picture them in your head and predict the information. So when you're looking at the form and it says child's name, child's date of birth, then you might realize that, oh, wait a second, this is somebody registering for a school or a nursery. It's probably going to be the parent, right, with the child. So you try to picture that school situation and imagine what kind of questions are asked in that situation, okay? They'll give you some information in some of the boxes. We'll look at that in a minute. That's very useful because you can often predict or even guess the correct answer, okay? These ones you need to really follow patiently with the audio. If you miss an answer, don't panic. Just look ahead and keep going forward. You can't rewind time unless you have a time machine. So if you miss a question, just stay calm, keep focused, and move along. This is also true for flowchart type questions. You'll see that in a minute. Okay. So here is a classic kind of form completion question, also taken from our practice exam. So just listen to this. Now here, okay, so I'm looking at this form. In my review time, I look at it, I see that it says name, and then it says Steve. So, okay, I have to listen to a family name, the address, the postal code, the birthday, the contact phone number. So this is obviously some kind of a registration form. So I'm paying attention to a dialogue, two people speaking, and I know by looking at this information here that I'm going to need to listen to dictation, okay? Dictation means that one of the speakers will be saying, hey, my name is Smith, spelt S-M-I-T-H. So again, practice that dictation listening at home so you can get these correct answers. These are easy points if you practice them at home, all right? So let's listen, and then let's get these dictation answers going.
There were 4 large funnels, or smokestacks, on the Titanic. Only 3 of them.
Anywhere aside from goalkeeper?
Oh, I forgot to ask your name.
Right, I guess that's important. My name is Steve Trammell.
Would you mind spelling Trammell for me?
Certainly.
Just a moment, I'll get us some other audio here from the website. It's a little bit louder than the PowerPoint.
Battery, 50%.
I'd like to play in Chester, but I'd be willing to travel to Liverpool if I had to.
The man says he wants to play in Chester, so B has been indicated for you.
Right, now I need...
Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hello there. I'd like to register for the Autumn Men's Football League.
All right. In what town will you be playing?
I'd like to play in Chester, but I'd be willing to travel to Liverpool if I had to.
Well, we have 2 spots left open on the team in Chester and 5 spots open on the team in Liverpool. There's a very good chance you would have to try out for the team in Chester. Are you a good player?
I consider myself a good player, yes. I have been to a number of the Autumn Men's League games in the past, just as a spectator, and I'm sure I would have no trouble fitting in.
Okay, good. So we will register you for Chester then. I just need to get some information from you, starting with your position. Where on the field do you prefer to play?
I'm a midfielder, although really I can play anywhere aside from goalkeeper.
Oh, I forgot to ask your name.
Right, I guess that's important. My name is Steve Trammell.
Would you mind spelling Trammell for me?
Certainly. Trammell is spelled T-R-A-M-M-E-L-L.
Right, now I need your home address, including your postcode.
I live in Chester, of course, at 452 King George Avenue. The postcode is MS868P4.
MS868P4?
Yes, that's right.
And your date of birth, sir?
The 8th of September 1986.
Okay. Now I need your phone number. Just a mobile number will do.
I don't have a mobile phone right now, unfortunately. I can give you my girlfriend's number instead.
All right, so notice that when you have this kind of a name or a postcode, there are kind of some triggers that you can listen for. So here the person says, would you mind spelling that for me? Or they might ask it a different way, like, is it spelt as TR? So they'll ask in different ways for the spelling. Listen for those markers so that you know that that dictation is coming up, okay? So listen for different ways. Mohammed Wahab says the first answer is, and let's put those in there, Trammell. And notice these kind of little tricks, if you want to call them that, where they don't say T-R-A-M-M-E-L-L, but instead the speaker says it more naturally, as we would do in a conversation in English. We would say it's T-R-A-M-M-E-L-L. So double M, double L. They don't go M-M-L-L. Okay, it's less confusing that way. And then the postal code. And again, here you're listening for dictation. Now, in section 1 and 2, they'll often double check it. So the man says it once. He says it's MS 866P4. And then the other speaker says MS A66P4. And then he says, no, it's MS 866P4. So they repeat it 3 times. So make sure you catch all of those numbers and letters to get that score correct, okay? So listen to those answers. Again, pay attention to these parts of the questions. All right, let's go to the next one. So again, in the actual course here, you have a little quiz where you get to play the audio and then figure these out. We don't have that option in these PowerPoint slides, okay? So here's an explanation that I just told you where The man says Tramell, and so the answer is Tramell. Make sure it's a capital T because it's a name. Okay, and then here is the answer for the next one, MS868P4. All right? And again, they double check it. Now, in the UK, they put a space here, but you don't have to worry about that, okay? You can just write it as one string together on the IELTS. It doesn't matter. I definitely suggest using capital letters for the letters M, S, and P, okay? Not small ones. That would look strange. It's not wrong. It just looks strange. All right? So that is form and note completion. Let me just do one more different type of question here for you. We'll get into this one here, and we'll talk a little bit about table completion, okay? Table completion, yeah, I mean uppercase letters, Hugh-Tran, absolutely. So use uppercase letters for those, not lowercase. So table completion is quite similar to form and note completion. You're given some information to help you, all right? There are some strategies for table completion as well. I think we've skipped through that. Yeah. Let's see, actually. I don't know why that didn't start from the beginning, although I said from the beginning. All right, so the third type that we'll look at, tables are similar to form and note completion. I'll review that in Tuesday's class. Let's look at the matching type question. So there's another kind of question that you can see in the listening where you basically have to match the correct information. This is kind of similar to multiple choice, okay? So matching is somewhat of a multiple choice question that's given to you in a different way, all right? Look at the differences in choices when you're reviewing this question, all right? Quickly try to match all of the possible answers. Some of them will be clearly wrong in some cases. If you don't have time to do step number 2 in the preview time, then do it in the answer transfer time, okay? And pay attention to what you're matching. Often you have two very similar pieces of information, so be careful about that, okay? Here's an example of a matching type question where you have to match it. So the question will say something like, listen to the sample recording, answer the question. So this is the question here. Match the time with the event. So match the time with the event. The key words is time and event. What's the event? This is the event. It's Steve's first match. This is the question, okay? So here in box 1, I have to put my answer. So I have to choose the correct letter, and as you can see, it's kind of like multiple choice. So if I take this and I combine it with this one here together, I can create a question from it. The question I can create from this is, when is Steve's first match? Okay. So when you have these matching type questions, you can actually convert them into multiple choice questions. So I can say, when is Steve's first match? Is it A, 30th of September, B, 28th, C, 3rd, or D, October 1st? All right? So let's listen to this sample question. Again, keep in mind, it's just like multiple choice. So you're focusing on time, event, first match. These are your 3 key points.
Battery, 50%.
Including over 40,000 eggs.
Have any questions?
Yes, I do have a couple. First, when does the season start?
The season starts on the 28th of September, although your first game is later, I think. Let me check the schedule. Yes, your first game is October the 1st in Liverpool. Let me make a copy of the schedule for you.
Thank you. Could you also tell me how long each game?
Okay, so again, that was a very quick little excerpt. You hear the speaker. The speaker says the season starts on the 28th of September. Now, that's the season starting, right? But the man's first game is a little bit later than that. The man's first game is October 1st. Now, again, this is a simple, easy example because it's taken from section 1. But notice how, again, the word match is paraphrased as game, okay? And we're interested in the game, not in the season. So the season starts on September 28th, so some students might make the mistake of choosing B. This was not said, so logic tells me that these two are not possible. The possible are these and these. And then, of course, the answer here is October 1st, so the correct answer is D. Now, keep in mind for multiple choice and for these matching to the correct event, sometimes you might have to match more than one, okay? Here we're just matching one. If the answer seems too easy or too good to be true, it often can be, especially in the IELTS, so be careful about that. It's likely not the first date that's being said, it's likely the second date that's being said, all right? So again here, clearly the answer is D, October 1st, okay? Now, in the online course, you have a quiz that will test your ability to match this type of question, so match your correct answers to the question. And then you go on to the next set. Let's have a look at where this came from, just so you can see it. Okay, here we go. So this is the part of the dialogue. You can find this always in the transcripts. Remember, the transcripts are in the back of the book. Use those to help you study. Here, the answer is coming from the phrase, your first game is October 1st. I strongly suggest, again, using the transcripts in the back of the book and identifying where the answers are coming from. It's very important that you know where answers are coming from, okay? We're going to look at sentence completion type questions. We'll start with that one next week on Tuesday. So Tuesday's class will continue with listening question type 4, and then in that class we'll finish up these specific question types. We'll look at the last 5 different kinds of questions and some examples of those ones. Until then, I highly recommend practicing your listening, practicing these strategies of critical thinking, paraphrasing, visualizing, using good timing, and focusing in on the strategies for the first 3 that we've talked about, all right? So lots and lots of points to practice there for you. If you've missed the key strategies, make sure to review those classes, okay? And I'll just get the screen back here one last time to remind you of our schedule coming up so you don't miss any classes. And also to let you know again that we will be releasing a new video for speaking. That's a pre-recorded video with a Vietnamese speaker who would get 8.5 on IELTS for sure. They have very good skills. Make sure that you watch that video. You can practice your speaking and your listening skills with that video coming up, okay? So be sure to check us out on our websites. The course that you just saw, of course, it's much more beautiful and clear on the website. It's designed for that. It's better colors. I'm just using dark colors here for the presentation. If you're studying academic IELTS, go to ahelp.com. If you're studying general IELTS, go to gieltshelp.com. You're very welcome, Swati. Have a wonderful rest of your day, Mohammed. It was good to see so many members in this early morning class. It was good to see you, Jeffrey and Manisha, as well. It's not a Vietnamese teacher. It's just a Vietnamese student who's very, very high level in English. They're professional, working as a doctor. So Very clever student. You'll see that video later on today. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everybody. I'll see you in 3 days. Make sure to study lots, study hard. If you have any questions, don't be shy. Send me an email. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye for now, everyone. Thanks for the fist bump, Jeffrey. You're very welcome, Pachu. You're very welcome, Tariro. Bye for now.